Welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Life podcast. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and today we're talking with Josh Sweeney. Josh, say hello.
Hello.
Originally connected through a mutual friend a few years ago, Josh and I both related to each other's stories, life priorities, and business trajectories. After selling his company in 2016, Josh has launched a few businesses, including FounderScale earlier this year. This business works with founder-led organizations to scale their company by focusing on proven sales systems. So Josh, thank you so much for joining us today to share your life. Tell us about you and a little bit about your story.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me. So story-wise, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I haven't left.
So you're one of the few.
I'm one of the few. That's what they tell me. I think outside the perimeter, it's more common. But yeah, it's been great. You know, lots of opportunity, low cost of living, can bounce to any other country fairly quickly through Hartsfield. So just never had a really.
And
Go
you've
ahead.
really seen the transformation of the city.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
I see pictures from when I was little and forget how far it's come in some ways.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so stayed here all my life. I'm married, have two boys, and
Yeah.
I'm heavily involved in their life.
Yeah.
I
And
coach
and
as a
and they
youth
play
sport.
they play a little different sport, don't they?
Yeah, they both play different sports. So my youngest is in football, but also
Yeah.
lacrosse,
Okay. Lacrosse. Yeah.
which I would say isn't quite as it's getting more common in the Southeast
Yeah.
than it was before. And then, yeah, my oldest, we both do MMA and jujitsu, so that's a bit
Yeah.
different as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fun. So now tell me about a little bit about your business story, how you ended up selling your business, and then where you and how you ended up with FounderScale where you are now.
Yeah, so I've been through a number of businesses. I've always been an entrepreneur, but I would say my first successful business was at Core Systems. We did CRM consulting and large CRM implementations. And I did that for about 9 years. So I bootstrapped it and grew to a few million in revenue before selling that in 2016.
Yeah.
And
And
then
what
from
was
there,
the trigger? I mean, you could have sold it before that or later. Was there a timing aspect of that for you?
yeah, there was some timing. I had looked at selling it earlier and the valuations just weren't very good. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I got to buckle down and do more. You know,
Yeah.
the valuation's got to be better. I need to get further along. And then there was a little bit of just probably getting fatigued in the business and the market that
Mm,
we were in. And then there was also some roll-ups that were happening in our industry and with the product that we serviced. And
yeah.
so it was time to capitalize on the other organizations that were doing those roll-ups and go ahead and make that exit.
Mm. And then you do that, and then it's like, what do I do? Who do I want to be when I grow up? Kind of thing, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So I went to work for the company that acquired us for a little over a year. And I did that because I didn't know what I was going to do next. And then there's some non-compete agreements
Yeah.
that go into being acquired. So you don't go right back into what you were doing. And so, yeah, from there, I had to start to figure out what was next.
Yeah. And so what was your inclination and where did you start and how did that lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I started again. I had the non-compete, so it's like, okay, I'm not going to go back into CRM just yet. I did it for 9 years. Kind of wanted a break, so I went into company culture space and
Yeah.
helping organizations build high-performing teams. Learned a lot of lessons, but learned that I still think that business is about 5 years, 6 years ahead of its time,
Yeah.
and it was tough to really sell culture and team performance and see that we could grow it to the size company that I wanted for my next venture.
Yeah.
And so we really just put that on pause, and I went back into CRM and sales and launched
Yeah.
FounderScale.
Okay. And so tell us about FounderScale. What is it? How does it operate? And what's your role in it?
Yeah, so FounderScale, we help founder-led B2B organizations increase sales. And we do that by focusing on sales engagement platforms. So
Yeah.
what that is it's really leveraging webinars, things like webinars and interview style podcasts similar to this to help people generate leads, but also look at the long-term strategy of the content and all the follow-on benefits you have in that strategy, as opposed to just cold outreach to set meetings, which is you either get meeting or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And we definitely see people taking both roads, but probably more often the less effective one right now, especially if you're on
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn, there's a lot of that, emails, everybody gets cold outreach and, it's not as strategic. And I don't think there's as much of a long-term benefit as if you use a platform where you have webinars and you have podcasts and you have all this content that later is going to be a really great inbound strategy for you
Yeah,
while also generating those B2B leads today.
yeah.
So it does double duty instead of a single duty that may or may not work out for your business.
Yeah, yeah. So let's take a step back and then we'll jump into systems and I'm sure you'll have a lot to share there. But it's September 2020. We're 9 months into a year that started out one way and completely flipped upside down for most of us. So it's been a health crisis, an economic one, a social one. Um, what do you think about this? How should we be looking at this? How should we be responding? And how should entrepreneurs, be leaning into it?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I'm predicting this will be the first time we see aliens for Q4. They're actually coming, so we can have the Independence Day situation and all figure out how to bond together.
Yeah.
You
What does that look
know,
like?
that could happen in 2020. If it's going to
Or it
be,
might
it's
be the
going to
sequel. It might be 2021.
right. It might be. Let's hope not. I would like to get 2020 wrapped up along with everybody else. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack. The health, economic, how do we wisely look at that and face it in different ways? For me, I just look at how I can face it and what really works for me. And I have a few different ways that I look at these things. The first one's ownership.
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of the book Extreme Ownership and think that you can blame other people for different challenges all day. You can blame externalities, but you're really only giving them control of the
Yeah.
outcome. So I look and say, what could I have done better in each one of these situations? And sometimes, honestly, I don't feel like, they're my fault,
Yeah.
but I do look at it and say, okay, I'm still going to take ownership. What decision could I have made? So, if there's any way that I can take action, then I do that and I plan for that later because I don't want to give anybody else the power over the outcomes in my life, no matter
Yeah.
what's happening.
Well, and the other aspect of that is, so we blame someone else. We're still stuck with facing the situation, right? And so,
Yeah, yeah, you're still in the
yeah,
same spot.
yeah, it doesn't change anything. And at least ownership gives us a path forward. And so I guess on the business side, what can that look like? Um, you know,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that happening right now where, we can, as business owners, we can look to COVID and say, we're going to blame COVID. We're going to blame, the other crises that we're having. And we can sit back on that and not make a decision or be indecisive about that. But, some of the top entrepreneurs I work with and we work with and that are in like the entrepreneur organization I'm in, I mean,
yeah,
they've pivoted already and they're moving forward with vigor. So, an example for us is a lot of business owners in their early days find business through referrals and networking.
yeah,
Well,
hmm,
all of those events went to a ground to a halt.
yeah,
And so now is a good time to say, okay, how do you switch platforms? Do you do webinars? Do you do podcasts? You can say, well, the way I did it was done and I'm just going to hang out, or you can take that as an opportunity to go learn and grow. And I've
yeah,
seen that with a lot of entrepreneurs where I actually got off the phone with one before this and he goes, I'm actually having my best year ever. Like we
yeah,
had this strong pullback and then now it's just unleashing the floodgates and we're even better prepared because we got to refactor and restructure and do what we needed to grow.
yeah,
And I know that's not happening for everybody, but I am seeing a lot of people make that pivot and forge ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I think I guess when you think about as the year ends and just even to next year, and with so much uncertainty out there, what would be some kind of guiding principles that are helping you and that would help others as well?
Yeah, guiding principles. Yeah, I say one, the owner, I go back to the ownership piece.
Yeah.
Look at what you want to achieve and go own it. Make the
Mm,
changes, take ownership, grow. We're big on growth in my organization and me personally. So when you own it and you go grow and you set that as a guiding principle and you don't worry about what else is happening, then there's only really one way to move
Mm.
forward. Another one is, I like to say, you have to be the change that you want to see.
Yeah.
There most issues have there's a challenge, and you can either place blame and hope it all works out or hope other people change. But really what I found over time is, if I want it to be any different, I have to act first,
Mm.
not place it on somebody else to act first so that then I can act accordingly.
And what is
Um,
that acting first? What do you see as, what does that do for you, and what does that do for the people around you?
Yeah, I mean, a simple example is relationships. If I want a relationship to flourish, I can get discouraged because I reached out to somebody a few times and they didn't reach back out. Maybe they didn't have time, whatever it is. But I can continue to act first and with trust and respect and say, okay, let's get together. What else can we do to get together? Another example of acting first is just, if you want something to change, you go act and do that. Be that
Yeah.
change, and be that change with your feet and your
Yeah.
actions, not just your words. I think that's
Yeah.
another important thing that I'm seeing out there is there's a lot of people that want to communicate change,
Hmm.
but then if you followed them after they communicated what they wanted, they go back to their house and sit down on their couch, and
Yeah.
that doesn't really incite any change. So that's really part of being the change you want to see and taking that
Yeah.
action.
So if someone's like, all right, Josh, I want to be the one that acts first. I want to be the one that takes extreme ownership. I'm scared, or there's something holding me back. What would you tell them?
That's a great question. I would say, if you're taking action and you're making it positive and you're doing it with trust and respect of the other people that are around you, then it'll all work out in the end. Sometimes you just have to make that leap of faith and
Mm.
put fear aside a little bit, and that can be hard.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not, but a lot of times, if you come at it positively and in a positive light, other people are going to respond positively, and it's all going to work out. And there's going to be some kinks and you're going to have to work some things out, but positivity, trust, and respect, is a great thing to lead with.
Yeah. Well, and I guess then, when the other thing that you said a little bit earlier was that brought the idea of focus and clarity. And so someone can go, I want to act, I am acting, but they could also be wandering in circles, right? So they may not even be going anywhere fruitful. So how does clarity and focus play a role in this?
Well, you definitely want clarity in what you're looking to achieve, right? So that goes back to, do you want to talk about it or do you want to take action? And to
Yeah.
take action, you definitely need clarity. You need to be able to say, I'm going to go impact that.
Yeah.
How am I going to impact that? What are the steps to impact, health or social crisis or economic change or whatever it is? And how can I take action on that? So I always start with the end in mind. Where do I want to go?
Yeah.
And then, another way to work on that is to get in front of other people who want that to happen and say, what are the actual action steps? Where do I need to go? Who do I need
Yeah.
to talk to? And start to fill in that path.
Mm.
So that gives you the clarity. And I think that also gives you the focus, because we can get off track. All of us have some sort of goal in mind. And throughout that, we get pulled in different ways.
Yeah.
But if you really know where that lighthouse is and you want to go that direction, then the focus, can always you can always refocus back to where you're going.
Mm. And I guess, so you've talked about like the idea of taking that step, having the clarity to know where you're going, right? The other piece of the puzzle is, okay, you've started, you're moving in the right direction, but there's something about actually finishing the job and grit and perseverance to actually follow through and to keep at it beyond the initial excitement and emotion. So how have you developed grit over the years, or what's developed grit in you?
Yeah. Well, I'm a natural entrepreneur, so I think I have a certain level of grittiness
Yeah.
where, I just don't want to fail.
Yeah.
Set a goal, go after it, stay on it. But the reality is that is difficult. So I'm constantly educating myself and being around other people with more grit. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the big
Mm.
ones is find other people who have done it and have more grit than you. And
Yeah.
if you're around them a lot, you know it can be done, and they keep pulling you up. So
Mm.
that's one way is find those people to be around. You know, the other one is I think like education. One thing that comes to mind from your question is the book Atomic Habits. And
Okay. Yeah.
it's about, you know, making these really small changes that impact things downstream,
Mm.
you know, and there's all kinds of root causes of why something happens. You know, if
Yeah.
I'm not eating healthy because when I go home, the first thing I do is sit on my couch and, you know, then I snack the most.
Mm.
So what is the one thing I can do is, well, I'm never going to go home and then sit. I'm going to
Yeah.
write a list of 5 things I'm going to do first, you
Yeah.
know, and maybe it's, you know, do the dishes or make the dinner or whatever, and redirect those behaviors. And there's all kinds of behaviors that we have in our life. And I know I have that once I redirect them, everything else falls into place.
Yeah. It's I guess a keystone habit is what power habit talks about, as the habit that informs the other habit, the sub habits.
Right. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, all right. So you've started, you've sustained, you've stayed focused, you've had clarity, and you either accomplished the goal or you're close to it. How do you know when it's kind of time to just let it go or call it quits or say it's time to stop?
Yeah, I think that's what it depends on kind of what you're stopping,
Yeah.
and really what your end goal is. So the question is does this still serve the end goal that I'm going for?
Yeah.
If it still serves the end goal, then maybe you're just getting fatigued and you need to,
Mm.
get back to the grit.
Yeah.
You're just gonna have to grind it out because it serves that end goal if you know where you're going and what you're trying to accomplish. If it no longer serves the end goal and it's just pulling, life out of you to do that, then maybe it's time to stop.
Yeah.
And I think that's the realization I've had, with some false starts with other businesses in the past and things like that, where I look at it, say, does that accomplish what I want to do, where I want to go? Does it fit into the bigger life picture? And
Yeah.
if the answer is no, then sometimes it's time to quit.
Mm. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. So tell me about just what does it mean to you to live better, and how do you go about that? And what would you speak into that?
Yeah. So to live better, I think that's going to be different for different people. Um, Living better is about doing more of what you love and less of what you don't, right? So
Yeah.
living better is, if I can go do more of this over here, get rid of these items that are really a drain on me, to me, that's living better. And how do I constantly live better is I take
Yeah.
those actions to make that happen.
But that also implies that we either seek out things that don't fit in that, or we allow those things to come into our life. So what's going on there, and why does that happen?
Yeah, I think there's all kinds of reasons. I know one challenge I've had is, okay, I want to be healthier and more active.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeking out more opportunities to go hiking, or I'm seeking out more opportunities to be active with other people and be healthier. But there's other ways, there's other pressures on your life that cause that not to happen, right? So, shuffling the kids around, going
Yeah.
to events, family life can have an impact on whether other people in your life are highly active or not. There's all kinds of factors. And that's where, I go back to the extreme ownership is like, if you want that, you just have to get rid of the excuses and go figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of reasons that those things creep into your life. And sometimes it's really slow. And
Yeah.
you wake up and realize it months or years later and go, I need to shut that down. I need to get rid of this, and I need to, supplement it with this. Yeah.
And do you see that as a dramatic thing, or as an iterative process?
I think it varies. Yeah, I am. It's hard to pick one because when I think of the examples, like I can be dramatic in that when I decide to do something, it's
Yeah.
fast and furious. It's like,
Mm.
hey, I need to drop some weight, and I just go hardcore and drop weight.
Yeah.
But But the slow, methodical way and eating healthier and better and changing your lifestyle for the rest of your life is a lot better strategy. It can just be significantly difficult,
Yeah.
depending on who you are. And so that's kind of a personality style. And then some things just have to change slowly over time. They take time to change,
Hmm.
and for the right conditions and things like that. So I think it depends on whether it's weight loss or growing a business or changing, having a better marriage.
Yeah.
Some things can be done rapidly and some things need to be done over time.
Mm. So that's the life side of things. So what about the work? What does it mean to work smarter? What does it mean to be a smarter entrepreneur? Clever, creative, innovative.
Yeah, so working smarter is definitely different for different people. I know people that do a great job. They're like independent consultants. They have really good rates and they effectively work, what would be the equivalent of 20 hours a week, but still maintain their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And, that's really good for them. And that's working smarter is I want to work less time, make more and have more free time. Um, and so that's their kind of style. For me, working smarter is more about efficiency and
Okay.
accomplishing more in a given day. So I look at things like one of our values in FounderScale is 10x. How do I look at something and say, how can I do 10 times more of that, but without 10 times the resources?
Yeah.
If I look at something and say, this takes me 2 hours to complete, how can I do twice as much, but in half the time? So
Yeah.
I look at things around efficiency and getting more done in a day, but not necessarily with more time.
Yeah.
So that to me is working smarter. And I see that in a lot of the companies we work with too, and a lot of other founders I work with where, I'll walk in and see that they're adding more headcount to
Yeah.
solve a problem. And that's kind of like brute forcing it to me is add more
Yeah.
headcount instead of taking a technology solution that could fix it and automate it.
Mm. Well,
There's just all different ways.
yeah, and I very much have that mindset, that mentality of um, automation or leverage technology and let people do what they're good at and let technology do what it's good at. But is that a generational difference? Is that a personality difference in terms of the kind of the human capital versus the technology capital?
I would say it's both like a cross section of generational and or industry. So
Yeah.
there's certain industries that just lag behind where they've never really had to leverage technology. So when I think of like law firms, smaller law firms, I think of construction companies, some of these other organizations where they just naturally have they're more hands-on in some way, like in construction, and they came up through that to build the company. They don't naturally look at technology as a solution. Whereas, you can be 55 years old and run a technology consulting firm and you've been in it since the
Yeah.
70s and you think through that technology lens. So in that case, again, I'm generalizing construction and legal, but it's different for different industries. Some adopt it earlier than others and some have it inherently built in. So there's that section. And then there is the generational where,
Yeah.
if you just grew up solving problems with technology, like I talked to somebody the other day and they were frustrated at their job because they're like, we use Google Docs and everybody passes around Excel files and waits for people to update them before others instead of just using Google Sheets, which is live and collaborative,
Yeah.
and they just can't adopt it. They just
Yeah.
won't adopt it. So like this person's frustrated at their job because they know they are used to using a very efficient
Yeah.
technology and know that it doesn't even cost anymore.
Yeah.
The group that's there is just generationally different
Yeah.
and won't do it,
Yeah.
so that becomes a frustration at a generational level.
Yeah. I had a client who it actually got themselves onto HubSpot, so which was great. But they weren't using it to the degree. And so I was like, you've got like this machine that can do this thing and you're not even using it. And so I ended up helping them set up a system that it saved their office manager person probably about 1,200 hours a year. And and it was awesome. And then it allows us to scale and do other things, and that person could focus on actually customer relations. So, so it ended up being a really good thing.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. I mean, when I did just CRM consulting, we did anywhere from 30 to $1,000 to $1 million implementations. And
Mm,
I mean, we saw that all the time where, somebody is physically routing leads,
mhm.
manually going in and changing who gets a lead. And they're doing X number a day, and it takes up 8 hours of their day every day. And if they doubled their amount of leads, they need another person. And then they just hired somebody, and we would go in and look at how they routed leads, and we're like, it's actually 4 hours worth of work to automate this. So like
Yeah.
for less than $1,000, we can make it automatically route an infinite amount of leads, and that person can go do something more valuable on the team.
Yeah.
And you want them to, because they already know the environment, right? They can move
Yeah.
to another role. And that, I think, is the generational and just different pieces where we look at it through a different lens because we're in that space, and other people look at it through their lens because
Yeah.
of their experiences.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing that comes to mind when you say that is, and you tell me how you work through this. There's a control aspect. There's one client that I know there's a person that likes to route those leads. They want the control, right? They
Yeah.
don't want to let it go. Even though it's like a higher level person that shouldn't be spending that time doing that. So what are your thoughts on the control aspect of that, and how do you help them let go?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest one. I mean, I like to have conversations like when I do one-on-ones with my team members. I say, what are the three things you're doing right now that you love doing? And what are
Mhm.
the three things you would prefer to get off your plate and have somebody else do that they like doing, right?
Yeah.
Because everything you don't like, there's somebody who really loves to do that. There's a
Yeah.
different type of personality in somebody who loves it. And so I try to make it more of a conversation about growth. Well, we can't really get you there if you're still stuck doing this, and then shift it into an opportunity. That doesn't always work. Some people just won't let go of control. But there's different strategies to try and help them overcome that, or show them that there just is
Yeah.
a better way.
Well, and the thing that I do and that I like is I think of myself as a conduit, and that like I'm essentially, things should flow through me, right? Things should go. I don't want to hold on to things or to accrue or collect them, because out of an insecurity that gives me job security, right? That makes sure I know that if I do good work and I allow that stuff to pass through, I'll always have an opportunity, right? And so there's something about kind of planning with the end in mind, planning for the handoff, planning to delegate this, planning to hire it out, right? But it does take a lot of, I don't know, it took a while to get there for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I imagine there are probably aspects of my life where that's not entirely the case. So the other aspect, part of it is also not necessarily that people can't solve the problem, that technology always can, but also how people solve the problem can shift. So for example, as a freelance consultant, I work with other consultants and freelancers, and we work together on projects. I was talking to a client recently who wanted to do a marketing project. And as we were talking about it, I said, oh, we could help you with that. And I can bring in these freelancers and da, da, da. And the person said, well, maybe we should just hire an agency, because it's that way, we're not having to worry about who's doing what and whatnot. But what's funny about that is a lot of agencies will then call me to help them do that project.
Oh yeah, it's the same thing. It's all, some of that's all in packaging, right? Like
Yeah.
they want one person to bill them, and they want one account manager, and they don't want to feel like they're going to have to deal with multiple different people. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a lot of things that happen in the background that are essentially the same, but the packaging may be a little
Yeah.
different.
It all looks on the surface level, but just this idea that how we do business is shifting and changing. People would hire employees, and maybe that's not necessarily the way. Maybe you can hire a contractor, or maybe you can partner with a company. So a lot of ways, but I think overarching entrepreneurship, I think entrepreneurship in a lot of ways is about mentoring and leading people. And so when you think about guiding others, and mentoring and sharing with them. What does that mean to you, and how does that play a role in your entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think it plays a huge role for me. So I think I have four people I'd consider mentors right now.
Yeah.
And really for me, for on the getting a mentor side and having mentors, they fill all kinds of roles. So, they fill blind spots,
Mm.
or they push you to new heights. There's mentors that want to see you succeed across the board and have like really high EQ and can
Yeah.
coach you in certain situations. And then there's other ones where, maybe there's a certain period of time that mentor, it's more of a situational mentor,
Okay.
where they have expertise. Like I know one of my mentors right now, they have significantly more experience raising capital and with intellectual property protection. Well,
Yeah.
with where we want to go with the business right now, we need experience in both of those. And in my last company, I didn't have to do any IP protection, and it was all bootstrapped, so I didn't have to raise capital.
Yeah.
So I can really look to somebody else who's already been down that road multiple times and has extensive experience, so that I don't have to go reinvent the wheel. I can
Mm.
learn from them. So there's getting mentors and finding people that really lift you up and help you get there more quickly and want to help. And then I think there's also mentoring. So,
Yeah.
at any point, I'm also mentoring other people and that with experiences I've been through. So I'm uniquely positioned to fully understand how to grow B2B services companies, because I grew a multi-million-dollar B2B service company, looked
Yeah.
at ways to package, productize, and scale, without the human element, to add technology and recurring revenue to services businesses and
Yeah.
other struggles that somebody who didn't get quite that far,
Okay.
might need help with.
Yeah.
So that's where I like to also pass it along and see where can I help and where and what should I stay out of, right?
Yeah.
There's certain things that people get asked for where it's like, yeah, it's probably not my specialty.
Yeah.
Let's leave the ego out and just be
Yeah.
upfront and stay in my lane.
Well, I guess so. When you think about mentoring others, what is it that motivates you to do that?
For me, it's mainly just giving back. I think it's a way to pass it on for all the people who helped me.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of people that have helped me throughout my career, where I
Yeah.
can point to moments in time and say, I got here mainly because I met the right person at the right time. And, I went out and found them. I put in
Yeah.
the effort to make
Yeah.
that. And I put in the effort to listen and lower my guard and get rid of ego and
Yeah.
hear what they had to give me, which is also another thing that
Yeah.
some people have challenges with.
Yeah.
Um, so, it took work, but I also feel like there's a really good way to pay it forward. And I
Yeah.
enjoy that. I enjoy seeing other people succeed.
Mm.
Especially, and personally, I get some fulfillment out of being able to say, well, we did this. And then if they go do it, it works for them, so that's also personally fulfilling for me.
Yeah. And I guess the fact that you have mentors and you seek them out and you listen to them, what would you tell a person that's like, well, Josh, he doesn't know what he's doing. If he was a real entrepreneur, he'd be figuring this out on his own. Oh, tell me about that ego pride thing that many of us have faced.
Yeah, I think that can be a challenge for a lot of people. It can be a challenge because it is a blocker, and some people just have this growth mindset, and others
Mm.
have the idea that they can do it on their own. And
Yeah.
I think over time you learn lessons. And I know if I look back and those people too, I think if they look back and they really think about how they got to certain situations, other people help them get there.
Yeah.
We don't do it in a box. Do we put in massive amounts of effort and take ownership and grind through a lot of things on our own? Sure.
Yeah.
But there are pivotal moments, I think, for most people where something happened and they just need to give it the credit that it's due,
Yeah.
and then look for more of those opportunities.
Mm. Have you ever had a negative or a toxic mentor that you had to finally get rid of or part ways with?
I don't think I've had ones that were toxic. I don't think I've had any go that far, um, or even negative. I've had ones that just didn't work out. Like
Yeah.
we were connected and somebody thought it was a good connection, and we had a few meetings, and we were just like, like, I don't think I can help you in any way. And what they're providing doesn't really help me in any way. And it just wasn't as good of a fit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, we're just going to have to end this and go move on.
Yeah.
So there's some strategies that you learn early on to put some bounds around how long you're going to mentor somebody,
Yeah.
and what you want to do to have like a little bit of a grace period to say, okay, 90 days in, do we want to move forward? Does this feel like a
Yeah.
good fit?
Okay.
And so there's ways to give yourself some outs that you learn
Yeah.
after one or two go wrong, and give them some outs too, because my hope is always that, the mentor can learn something, and I think that's another, going back to your question about what's in it for me as well. If I'm mentoring, there's a lot of fresh ideas that come
Hmm.
about from somebody that's younger, sees it, or in a different industry and just sees it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And I learn as a mentor. So that's always helpful.
Yeah. So you also coach sports for your sons.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between coaching in the business world and the sports world, and then coaching adults versus aspiring adults?
um, let's see, the difference between coaching youth sports and adults. I don't know. You got a lot of the same personality challenges.
Yeah.
So with youth sports, I mean, the kids' personality is based on their upbringing and their parents.
Yeah.
So, we always talk about being coachable. And I think that's something that's the same across the board. Some adults are coachable and
Yeah.
take feedback, and there's proper ways to give feedback, of course. But some adults are coachable, and some kids are coachable, and some adults are not coachable, and some kids are not coachable. And that just is probably more of a similarity. I would say there's more
Yeah.
similarities maybe than differences,
Yeah.
quite honestly. I think people think that there's some differences. So like one thing I hear in the business world is, oh, well, I hired a person that already knows how to do that, and they've been in the industry for 20 years, and I pay them a lot of money, so they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I don't really apply to that philosophy. I think everybody needs to be managed in some way. So
Mhm.
even myself, right? I'm the founder. I don't report to anybody, but I'm managed in that I have mentors and accountability partners that put
Yeah.
pressure on me to grow and achieve certain goals, and will ask me why I didn't, right? And that's not too much different from a manager, a good manager. A good manager to me is a coach, not a boss,
Yeah.
and they're holding their people accountable. And when there's a blocker, they're trying to get it out of their way, and they're trying
Yeah.
to coach them through that blocker and what they would do. And so I think people think that there's a difference between maybe coaching youth
Yeah.
sports, because they're like, oh, well, I have these little kids, and they don't know anything, so I'm just going to coach them. And I'm like, well, adults are very similar in a lot of ways. Like, don't just assume they know, because you don't know their background, and we
Yeah.
all have different experiences. So there's always a coaching opportunity.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk about stories. They shape us, they inform us, they entertain us. Fictional, nonfiction. How have real or fictional stories shaped you as a person?
I'm probably going to lead to the real side a little
Yeah.
more. I listen to nonfiction business audiobooks pretty much all the time in my car. I don't listen to the radio.
Yeah.
Every once in a while I get into fictional, but it's just a little bit, it's just to check out. So I think the nonfiction for me is powerful, just because I can listen to a story and see what somebody else was able to accomplish in the same
Mm.
lifetime, right? In the same, by a certain age. And I think there's a little bit of, for me at least, there's a little bit of other people have accomplished this, so it's not impossible, right? It can be
Yeah.
done.
It reminds me of there's a name for this phenomenon that I don't recall, but it's the idea that when someone breaks an Olympic record, other
Yeah.
people start to break it. They don't break the new one, but they reach that same standard. And there's just something about, oh, that's possible that all of a sudden people are able to do it. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot of that. I think I don't remember the phenomenon either, but I remember some of the talks about it around, like, well, nobody thought you could break a X minute mile, and
Yeah.
the record just stood forever, and finally somebody did it, and all of a sudden, like, 10 more people did it,
Yeah.
like within 6 months or something like that. And
Yeah.
don't fact check me on any of that information, but that was the essence of the concept. And yeah, I think there's some of that where it's like, okay, this is doable.
Yeah.
and you can tear up. So like when I'm around other entrepreneurs that are my age and are doing twice as much revenue or have solved other problems, like, okay, this is solvable. I'm talking to somebody that has
Yeah.
done it. Or in the concept of reading, I'm reading about somebody who has done it, and so I can get there.
Yeah.
And you can see some of the paths and some of the thought processes and things around that. So their stories are inspiring in different ways.
Yeah. What is it that stories can do that sheer monologues or sheer data or facts cannot?
Stories drive feelings, which people respond to.
Mm,
People respond to a feeling, a challenge, something, it being solved through a pain point. Like when I think about buyers in a B2B sales cycle, so many people that are experts want to show them the data, like
mm,
here's the numbers. But really the pain point you're solving starts with the word pain, and
yeah.
pain is a feeling. And I think stories really help people understand that. They also provide examples that resonate. So I can tell you how to do something, but if I tell a story or two about that and how it factored in to the decision I made, that's where people really capture it and go, oh yeah, I had a similar situation like that. So they can identify with those stories a lot
Yeah.
more than they can identify with some data points.
Mm. And then what about narratives that they do drive us, but in a negative way? There's media narratives and political narratives and drama narratives and businesses. We can get caught up in them, and they actually can shape how we think and how we act in ways that we don't even realize is happening. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think my personal opinion is that too many people get way too caught up in that.
Yeah.
I don't even watch much of the news anymore. I don't get caught up in those narratives because it's all it's too much. It's overwhelming. And if you see that every day, I think people get caught up in it
Yeah.
and get caught up in that cycle instead of
Hmm.
maybe taking action to actually fix something and do something
Yeah.
and move with their feet. So I try and stay away from those and say, what can I influence? How can I have a positive impact? And maybe it is something going on socially that I can have an impact on, but I have to look at that and say, do I want to be part of the talk or do I want to be part of the action?
Yeah.
And the narrative, I think, is what drives all the talk track around it,
Yeah.
and so that's where you have to make a
Yeah.
decision. Which one do you want to be part of?
So we can feel good that we're talking, or we can actually solve the problem and do something about it.
Right, right. Or at least
Yeah.
try to solve the problem or
Yeah.
work towards an action.
Well, and I guess what comes to mind is that I think it's a lot easier to talk about it. It's a lot more complex to solve it. And so
Yeah.
do you think there's an aspect of that has to do with that difference?
Yeah, it's definitely easier to show up and talk about something. I
Yeah.
can show up and talk to you about any topic, or I can go out on the street right now and share my views
Or even
however I
and
want.
criticize too. It's easy to
I can
criticize, right?
criticize, I
Yeah.
can lift up, I can do whatever I want, right, from the street. But the question I ask myself is that the best use of my time? And is that going to have the positive impact that I want? Or I can say, okay, well, maybe I want to voice my opinion, but now I actually want to see what else can I do about that, right? So I can talk about hunger, or, I can go with my kids scout troop and help pack food that's going to get shipped somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I think about things is what is that social impact, and do I want to talk about it or do I want to take action? And the action is a physical action. The action isn't talking about it more. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
just to kind of clarify there.
So yeah, well, I guess then what comes to mind is when with the people that are actually doing stuff, they're making stuff happen, they're changing in real tangible ways. Does that talk sometimes actually make it harder for them to actually make that change? Or is it
I
just
think it
noise
could.
that
Yeah.
doesn't really?
I'd have to think about specific examples probably to kind of bring it home and know what the narrative and story is. But I definitely think it can take away value because so many people start talking about how that message is delivered, right? You're talking about this, and then another group says, well, we don't want to talk about it that way, right? And so
Yeah.
the conversation starts to be about what I would say is the branding of something, right?
Yeah.
Or the intent of something. And now we're all caught up in a bunch of, more philosophical conversations instead of going and doing it. And it's taking light from the people who are
Mhm.
taking action.
Yeah. So let's talk about systems. They are everywhere. They affect us. We create them. So how should we think about and use them? And what are some examples of systems that you leverage?
Yeah, so I think about the business first. I think a lot of people reinvent the wheel instead of searching out a system. So, if I want metrics in my business and kind of an operating system around which I operate my business, they naturally progress and change and evolve and do it the way that they see fit at every point when you can easily go pick up a book that tells you exactly how to do it. And so, like, for example, one system we use is Traction EOS. And
Okay.
that's the entrepreneurial operating system. And it tells you how to run level 10s and tells you how to
Mm.
track your vision. And, there's all kinds of different pieces and there's a model to it. So the thing I love about systems like that is there's a book and there's audio out there and there's consultants as well.
Yeah.
So you can start using it yourself. And as you grow and use it and want to get better at using the system, you can opt to bring in consultants. And that teaches your entire team a system that
Yeah.
everybody can follow. And it also solves training issues and dissemination of information and updating based on lessons learned instead of it all being on your shoulders to build your own custom system.
Yeah. So what is it, there's a lot of companies I imagine we both worked with where the people are not on the same page. It's a bunch of individuals doing different things that happen to kind of be categorically in the same arena, and but we're rowing in different directions. The leadership's not communicating well. It's the opposite of what traction promises, right? um how does that happen, and how do you encourage someone to go from that chaos to something more streamlined, right? Just even the idea of it, not necessarily the specific system itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of that happens just because of the evolution of a business. So I don't remember where it came from, but I once heard that for every 30% of growth, you break 100% of your processes. And that's a pretty
Interesting.
vicious cycle.
Yeah,
That's
because it's
a
hard
pretty
to,
vicious cycle if you're going from 0 to 3 million, right? Because if you think of every time you grow 30%, you just broke 100% of the business. I don't know how many times you broke 100%, but that's a lot. I'd have to calculate that. Um,
well, and
so
it's almost daunting to
it
think that
is,
like I have to
yeah.
rebuild my business every 30%. I mean, this is just
Every time. Yeah.
yeah,
And I think it sounds extreme, but having done it, I think it's true. I think it's accurate.
yeah,
And so why does it happen is, one, the daunting fact of just reality, starts to help make it where people can't keep up. So if this changes now and I've added more people and I don't disseminate the information, then a few people are left out. And then I grow more and it changes again and other people are left on the old system and people don't even know what the new system is.
yeah.
And it just kind of snowballs from there. And so what
And
we have to do, what?
well, I was gonna say, and it does seem to be like a ping pong or a regression. Like they kind of go through that cycle, but they never actually leave it, right?
Right. Yeah, they
Yeah.
stay in that cycle and at some point the cycle gets so bad that they go, okay, big refresh. I need a trainer, right? They have to take a
Mm,
massive action to overcome what's happened.
yeah.
And then they get back on the wheel of, the progression at that point. So I think that's why it happens in many cases is just the natural flow of the effort it takes to keep your team up to date. So for example, I'm a big fan of Loom. So anytime I see something that goes wrong in the business or I learn something and I'm like, you use HubSpot as an example earlier. I use HubSpot and I figure out, oh, this is a better way to do it. I'll record a 5-minute Loom video and just send it out to my team. And then I put it in the training folder.
Okay.
So just the fact that I'm taking time, even though it's 5 minutes to do that, I've now recorded a video that I can send out to everybody on my team on the distribution list. And then I can archive it so that when I hire a new person, I can then send them to the video archive and they can at least watch them in order instead of not having any training. And that builds up over time, and you can decide to refactor it and do better to keep people trained. But most people don't take that one little step, right? Going again back to atomic habits. That's that one little thing that you can take 5 minutes out, or you can rush to the next thing. And when you rush to the next thing and forget about it and don't get to do it, what you just decided was, if I have a team of 20 people, I actually unintentionally just decided that I don't need to train them on that because I'll come back to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's a unconscious decision that you're making, that they don't need that information. And that's
Yeah.
where things start to go wrong.
Yeah. It's like that adage of, if you can't do something, if you don't do something yourself, it can't be done right, kind of thing. This idea that instead of taking the time to teach someone, I'm just going to do it myself, right?
Right.
And if I just taught them, maybe it took 10 minutes instead of 5, but that maybe saved me 30 minutes over the next few weeks, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it kind of goes back to the coaching kids and coaching adults, right? I have kids, they have to do chores.
Yeah.
And, they unload the dishwasher and they do it wrong, and then they do it wrong, and then they do it
Yeah.
wrong. And, you have to continuously go back and show them. And sometimes you just want to step in and just be like, I got it. I'll go in and move this item from here to there in the cabinet because that's where it belongs. Instead of taking a moment to say, hey, come in here. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you put this here. Next time I would like for it to go here. And here's the reason why it's important that it's here instead of there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a very rudimentary example.
Yeah.
But if you take that time, then they do it right every time. And I think with a kid, that's one person. But with a team, if you don't do that, you amplified that issue times the number of people on the team. So it's actually
Yeah.
a much bigger issue that you didn't
Mm.
take the time to coach them, because
Yeah.
now everybody's doing it. Maybe suboptimally, maybe not even wrong. They're just not doing it as well as it could be done.
Yeah. And I guess part of it goes back to what we were talking about, clarity and vision. And the sense that, like, for me with my kids, by the time they're all 18, I want them to be able to run our household without mom or dad in any way, right? Because then they're
Right.
going to have their own household, right? So it's not about me in the moment or them in the moment. It's about who they're going to become and the person I want them to become, right? And
Yeah.
so you deal a lot with people, when you think about systems and people and finding the right people and knowing who that person is, what have you learned about good systems for filtering and engaging with people?
Yeah. So in one of my last companies, we did a lot around the personality assessments and really understanding at a nature level, like a DNA level, what people are good at based on their personality. And I think a lot of people end up in spaces where they're working on things that aren't in line with what they do best. And so you get, not as good of results, or you get people that aren't happy with their job because they're doing something that's not a natural fit. And so in our system, we always look for a culture fit when we're hiring. Do they match our culture? So for example, we have a very growth driven culture. Our team, we have, I think, 7 people right now. We're on our 13th HubSpot certification this quarter.
Mm.
So one of our goals is for each individual in our organization, every team member has to get a certification or, some sort of certificate of training every quarter. Growth is built in. So when we hire, we ask questions about growth in their life. They show indications that they're growing, that they want to grow, that our environment would be good for them. So first we match on culture, and then we look at the job function and say, are we matching on personality? Is this something this person was built to do? Or is the job that they're applying for really counter to their personality and they may not know it? We see that a lot more with like early graduates and things like that, or people that are early in their career where, they thought something was going to be good. They went to school for it. And then later they find out that they hate that role.
Yeah.
Well, we can actually do there's a couple of assessments that have been around since the 50s that lots of companies use. And if you really know how to use them, I can look at it and say, here's what you're actually built to do from a nature perspective. The
Yeah.
other 50% roughly is going to be nurture. Like,
Yeah.
how do we support them in that role? But you don't want somebody doing something they're totally counter to.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what about in the work you're doing now? I mean, I think about sales, um, knowing the power of sales, and especially when you tether it into HubSpot, when you use a system, you can get to the point where it's very predictable in terms of scaling it and generating leads and generating deals and then income. Um, but it's a lot of companies don't get there, or it takes a
Right.
while to get there. So what do you think about sales systems, and how does that play out for you?
Yeah, I'm a total systems person because I do like the numbers and the predictability. And so I'm a big believer in that, if you really don't know the numbers and you can't tell me how many calls and emails it takes to generate a lead, which, generates X number of meetings and X number of opportunities, then it's not predictable, right?
Yeah.
You can't really scale your business if you don't know those numbers and you don't know what the outcome is. You can't decide how much you can hire or pay a
Yeah.
salesperson because you don't really know what they're supposed to produce. And I went through this early on before I knew the sales numbers, like early in my first business, where, if an experienced salesperson told me something couldn't be done or they didn't do it that way at their other company, I believed them because they
Yeah.
had more experience in sales. But when I really buckled down and learned sales myself and did it myself and came up with those numbers, I knew what could be accomplished. So
Mm,
an example of that is, hey, you need to make 60 calls a day,
yeah.
in prospecting. And I would have people that, they really just didn't want to do prospecting. And so they're like, well, that's too many. That's too many calls in a day. And
Yeah.
so I sat down myself and made 60 calls. And I'm like, that took about an hour and a half,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, what do you mean this doesn't fit in a day?
Yeah.
And so when I did it myself, I started to really build the system. And then from there, now when we bring in people, where we tell them, this is our system and this is how it's done. There's not as much room for discussion when
Okay.
you have built the system and you believe in it and you know the numbers. Whereas
Okay.
if you don't have all of that, you take lots of other opinions and people can do it their way.
Yeah.
And their way isn't necessarily any better just because they have some experience. So the
Yeah.
system reinforces that.
Yeah. It reminds me, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade has been on my mind of late. And there's the scene where he's crossing the letters and he has to write, I think it's Jehovah. The Jehovah letters are like, they're stable and the others are like fall into a cliff, right? But once he does it, right, he figures that out, and then he does the next one, which is this invisible bridge. And then the villains, they do it too, but they just follow his example, right? So he's the one, the pioneer is always the one that has to figure it out, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's been a lot of lessons. Like I always share with people, like if I'm mentoring or anything else, or even client prospects, it's like, I spent probably a couple of $100,000 in my first business figuring out how not to sell. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons you want to talk to me, is because I could tell you what we did and all the ways that we did it
Yeah.
wrong and what people told me, and what sales reps said, and what's just
Yeah.
untrue, and what things they're not doing because
Mm.
it's actually behavioral and they just don't want to pick up the phone, or they're scared to pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
That's why it can't be done, is because they have a fear of calling somebody and picking
Hmm.
up the phone, not because it physically can't be done. So that you learn all kinds of things like that you think the cause is a different cause, but it's not.
Yeah. And I would also say, and I'm sure you have a lot more experience on this, the system you build, you need to compensate them in a way that enforces the system, not fights against it, right?
Right, definitely. Yeah. So, I talk about, sales engagement being more of a philosophy and a culture than a tool. A lot of people look at like sales engagement tools. I want to do more outbounds. I'm going to buy an outbound tool. And it's like, well, the philosophy supports the tool, not the other way around. So like in
Mm,
our organization, one of our philosophies is, if they are a ideal customer profile and they're in HubSpot, I want a human reaching out to them every 21 to 30 days with something valuable, a guide, a booklet, an offer to go to a webinar, buy them coffee, invite to our Founders and Brews event where we get together with other founders, something that's helpful for them. And I want you to stay in front of them and continuously work on building that relationship and giving as much as you
Yeah.
can. And knowing that it'll come back at some point in time. So that philosophy of staying in touch with people, everybody in our database from every 21 to 30 days, then supports the tool, not, hey, go adopt this tool and just hammer it out. What's the philosophy behind that? Just more action.
Well, and the thing that there's a company I love called Harpoon, and it's a invoicing and accounting system for freelancers and agencies. But the system was actually built upon a philosophy that they're explicit about. And you can go on their website and they tell you the philosophy. And so it becomes every system is built on a philosophy. You often don't know what it is. And so I really fell in love with Harpoon because they were so explicit about it. And I was like, oh, that's the philosophy I'm looking for. And
Right.
It created some nuanced differences in the way that their tool operates that is unique to me, that I could go to like FreshBooks or something else and probably functionally do the same thing, but it would be those small little differences that make a big difference because of the work that I do and how I do it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned kind of everything does have a philosophy.
Yeah.
And the question is it a positive or a negative philosophy? And then has the leadership that's driving that philosophy conveyed it in the right way? Because I mean, I've worked with people where behind closed doors, you get a real feeling of their philosophy and you're like, this isn't going to go well. Like I can see why this is going sideways.
Yeah.
The companies who I see it all the time, kind of talking about the coaching and mentoring and being coachable is, hey, I've been in this industry 20 years. That won't work here. And I'm like, taxis said the same thing. Well, we're not taxis. Well, I can probably go find a few competitors that haven't been in the business for 20 years that are slowly catching up. I can go find those for any industry, or somebody that's going to completely revolutionize it more than just kind of copy and do something similar. So those are philosophies that are in people's heads that can definitely hold them back as well.
Yeah. There's, I'm reading, it's a fragmented story, but it's The Fall of Gondolin by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was one of the stories he wrote, but it never got published, and his son kind of put it all together. And but the most interesting aspect of the story for me is that this great city was built, and it was so great that they just became comfortable in its greatness that it could never fall. And the story is about its fall, So,
Right.
And our arrogance and pride, even if we are great at one point, it doesn't guarantee that we will stay there.
Yeah, definitely. And there's an exercise for that I really like. It's a little, maybe you could look at it as a little negative or macabre, but I call it the pre-mortem. So instead of losing and having a post-mortem of why things went wrong, you actually say, we're going to have a 1-hour discussion around a pre-mortem. And we're going to talk about why we failed. So you're actually projecting in the future. You're saying, we're about to do this and we want to be here. And what we're saying is, okay, today we're acting like it's, January 2021 and this failed miserably. Let's talk about all the reasons it failed miserably. And so when you get to brainstorm and everybody starts to think about it that way, they're like, oh, this is all the ways this could have gone wrong. Well, now we can start to plan for those. We can start to build it into the process now. And, are there things we're not thinking about? I think it was also it's similar in a way to, I think it was on World War Z.
Okay. The movie
where
or
the
guy,
book? I think it was the movie. And he was like, it was the 10th man rule, where like, if all 9 people agreed, then the 10th man had to disagree and go spend time researching it and telling everybody why
dissent. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, man, that's so great. Like, it's such an interesting concept that most people won't open themselves up to. But man, how much heartache in a business or life sense, would be saved if one person's goal was if everybody agreed they had to go counter. And they had to do the research and come back and say that. and they had permission to do it too.
Yeah.
When they counter, you're not allowed to rebut or,
Hmm.
tell them why they're wrong. You just have to listen and say, and with an open mind, and
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. That's great. Is there anything else you wanted to share that we didn't get to?
No, I mean, that's a lot of content.
Any final parting words of wisdom that you'd leave with us as we close out here?
Yeah, I guess, kind of on the talk track and taking action of, I kind of think in a lot of ways, talk is cheap,
Yeah.
take action. But when you take action, make it positive.
Mm,
See what positive action you can go take.
yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. How can people connect with you? What social channels are you on? What's your website? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can connect with me, Josh Sweeney, on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. You can go to founderscale.com and hit the contact page if you want to reach out and just say that you want to get in touch with me. So that's a couple different
And
ways.
who's a good fit if they're interested in working with your business?
Yeah, so a good fit with our business is a founder-led B2B organization, usually that has grown on referrals, but really wants to make the transition to from founder-led sales to sales teams,
Hmm.
and wants to do that in a more strategic way than just outbound outreach to set meetings.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your life with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.